Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Um, Thank you for joining today's webinar. The topic is Fiori for Beginners, Learn a New Way of Working with SAP Fiori. My name is Mathingi, and I'm a project manager here at Terra Information Group. I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin, I want to mention a few housekeeping items. All participants will remain on mute during the session. If you have a question for our presenter, please type it in the question box in your participant panel. If we are unable to get to your question during the session, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. Today's presentation is being recorded. A link to the recording will be sent to all registered attendees shortly after the session. I am pleased to introduce our speakers today. Mamta Agarwal is Managing Partner at Terra Information Group. Randy Ridenour is Senior Vice President of Sales at Terra Information Group. And Raghu, who's our main presenter, is Senior Architect with over 13 years of experience in SAP implementations and has been involved with Fiori implementation since the very beginning. And now I will turn it over to Mamta to tell you a little bit more about Terra Information Group. Over to you, Mamta. And next slide, please.
Thank you, Mathingi. So for for a brief introduction, let's go over the agenda. There will be an introduction to SAP Fiori. We'll talk about what Fiori is and how it can be used in different forms and for different modules. Fiori will talk about the Fiori launchpad and how you can re-engineer your business by giving your users a new way of working. We'll also talk about Fiori content design and some business roles. Okay, next slide. So talking about who we are and why we are doing this and how we can benefit you or what services we can provide. Terra has been an SAP partner since 1997. We've completed more than 100 plus projects and in different forms and upgrades and new implementations and support projects. Projects have been performed here, it says plus 12 countries, but we have completed projects in more than 30 plus countries so far. We have 100 plus customers, 140 employees worldwide, offices in 3 countries. We are also a channel partner and reseller of SAP in USA and Argentina. Next slide. Again, among all these services that TIG provides and the expertise we have in different areas and different domains and different product lines of SAP, Fiori Apps has been one of our forte, and we have seen tremendous value that's been brought to the on-premise customers and the new cloud customers by using the Fiori Apps. We have also established some rapid deployment programs for customers who want to quickly launch Fiori apps, and for any modules, it can be as less than like 6 weeks, anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. A Fiori app can be easily built and used. We are also integration experts on HCI, PI, PO, and Boomi. And excellent project references, of course. That's all. We have grown organically only through project references. Industry best practices, of course. We bring technology to our customers, but that's only like 50% of the work. The other rest of the 50% is industry best practices and how we can optimize your solution or your IT system to bring the most value to you. Global experience, as we mentioned, we've performed projects in more than 30 plus countries. Fixed price with milestone payments. TIG always has skin in the game. We can provide, that's the only reason we can provide this kind of pricing model where it's a fixed price with milestone payments. We don't get paid unless we deliver. Flexible payment terms and aggressive pricing. Of course, we beat any other vendor in terms of pricing and quality. Training options. Of course, training is a big part of any the usage and user adoption of any system. So training is something that we offer on a completely different plan, and it's also a part of any implementation. So if you were to implement SAP Fiori apps, training would be a part of it. A unique blend of resources for on-site, nearshore, and offshore. And this is one of the reasons we are able to bring some aggressive pricing and value-added resources to you. Flexible on-the-go support programs. So we have, if you're already using a Fiori apps and need some modification or changes to it, we have a very flexible on-the-go support program where you can use us only for the services you utilize. So for example, you have like one small change to be made to any app or any other module in terms of configuration or technical need, we can sign up a on-the-go support program where if you use 1 hour, you get billed only for those 1 hour. There's no commitment or any obligation to that program. Next slide. These are some of TIG's differentiators. Again, all of our implementations, the reason we can do it faster than better than others is because we use a proven delivery methodology. We have developed several assets to accelerate our implementation. So right from blueprinting to training documentation, configuration documentation, technical specs, everything starts off with a template. We also have a close partnership with SAP, who help us stay on the leading edge of the technology. Total cost of service is balanced pricing with outstanding quality. Full employment model and have industry-leading low turnover rates with our employees. All of our people, all of our resources have at least 10+ years of, on an average, of consulting and industry experience. So we also believe in hands-on work philosophy for shorter timeframes to delivery. Customer partnership and ease of access philosophy is a win-win relationship for all our clients, which means that we are so flexible to work with and very accessible. Almost we offer a 24/7 support. Also leaner, nimbler, faster project teams focused on achieving business benefits. And our values include, of course, quality, integrity, commitment, innovation, and very solution-driven. Next slide. So this is a brief, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but just gives you an overall breadth and width of our services that we provide, from projects which involve implementation, rollouts, localization, pre-configured solutions, and all of this would apply to a lot of the Fiori projects. Integrations, we deal with Boomi, HCI, or any other middleware and APIs. So staffing, again, you might have a team of your own, but might need some additional staff augmentation to help you with a project or just support and maintenance. We are able to do that as well. Again, on our maintenance program, we have a corrective, evolutionary, assessment, or remediation maintenance programs. Again, I spoke about this a little bit earlier. That's an on-the-go support program, which involves all sorts of maintenance and upgrades. Security. So if you are dealing, a large number of companies have complex security requirements and a need for continuous maintenance of those profiles. So if you're looking for some help with security in terms of like profile re-engineering or day-to-day support or just maintenance of users and profiles, we can support you with that under a completely different program called the Security Maintenance Program. Help desk, day-to-day maintenance, level 1, 2, 3 support, remote assistance, improvements, all of that would come under help desk. Custom development, if you're looking to enhance your solution by building some custom development, it could be in Java, it could be, a .NET or any other kind of add-on that you would like to build and integrate with SAP. We are able to do that with the help of our in-house development and offshore development teams. Learning, again, we have offer customized training, in-company workshops, functional training, technical training, and in terms of technology, of course, integrations is a big part of our support and implementation services, migrations, and also last but the least, roadmaps. As you're looking to scale up or scale down, you might want to add on more modules or use additional functionality that you're not using today. We can come in and do a 3-day roadmap strategy workshop with you to where the deliverable would be a strategy report with all of the details on how you can scale up and bring more value from your solution to your business. Next slide. Again, this is a high-level overview of how we manage our projects. In the planning stage, we start off with building a business case, road mapping, due diligence, services if needed, pre-kickoff, software selections, all of that, number of activities that happen during the planning phase. We are able to help with all of that. Building as, again, program and project governance, center of excellence development, process redesigning, ECC and other integration development, analytics, reporting, enterprise architecture, learning solutions, change management, post-merger integrations, and situation turnarounds. Again, under our AMS services, we just spoke about that, several very, very flexible on-the-go support program that can help you a lot. Okay, next slide. Yeah, I think from here on, we can hand it over to Raghu, and Raghu, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Mamta. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. Just to give a brief about me, my name is Raghu. As Matangi explains, I had close to 13 years or more than 13 years of experience in the area of SAP Security Authorization Fiori. Majorly focusing on the areas of Fiori from past 7-8 years now. Right from the day when Fiori was launched, I've been part of Fiori implementations. I've done multiple full life cycle implementations on Fiori, and today in this session we are trying to have a sneak peek about what exactly Fiori is and how it can add value to an existing business or to your business. So Fiori means flower in Italian, right? So it is named appropriately because it brings in a lot of user interfaces which are very beautiful to look at. I mean, earlier we were stuck to a GUI screen, SAP logon pad, which was very much restricted to an office workplace. Now we are moving mobile. So SAP mobility is a very big factor in terms of Fiori. When it comes to Fiori, the power of Fiori and the user experience which we get from Fiori is what making Fiori as a go-to application software in today's ERP world. So to understand Fiori, let's look at what are the pitfalls or shortcomings or pain areas, if I can call them, in our earlier model as well as in the earlier versions of Fiori. So the first and foremost is, as I explained, we have very restricted usage in terms of ERP software, which was restricted in an office workspace to your desktop in an office network, which was very inconvenient. And in today's day and world, when most of the people work remote, they work from their phones, they work from their tablets, Fiori brings in a lot of value in that area. So with Fiori, all you require is a web browser where you can access all the ERP system, and the interface is not as boring as it was earlier. Now they have improved the user interface. UI UX is the latest term now. It's not just user interface. Fiori promises to bring in a new user experience, which is the motto of SAP, and they have delivered it through Fiori. So I have listed up a couple of points here, which were the pain points even in the earlier versions of Fiori, and now we are much evolved state of Fiori, if I can call that. So Fiori was launched in somewhere around 2013, and from there on till now we have multiple versions of Fiori. Today we are in Fiori 3.0, and there are a lot of improvement areas, and there are a lot of apps which have been developed by SAP. If I can give a number, to this day there are around 14,000 Fiori apps which can be readily deployed, which will address 99% of all your business needs on a Fiori app-based browser interface, right? So there is no usage, or there is no requirement of a GUI screen to be available if the Fiori is implemented with its complete power. So the business end users will be using only Fiori. So Fiori will be the only entry and exit point for all their business processes to complete. So that's how Fiori has been designed, and that's what we are going to explain of how exactly it works. Now, so to explain about Fiori design, there are three main aspects which we need to consider: the values, the principles, and practice. Apart from these three core ideas or core design elements of Fiori, we will also have to look at the elements or the design languages which has been used. So Fiori for web, which means we can access Fiori, the look and feel of Fiori. It's all on a web interface or your HTTP or HTTPS access. So which means that it is highly mobile. You can use Fiori on your internet with highly secured protocols securing your connection to your system. Then you can use it on mobile, on your mobile phones, and also you can have your GUI as well as a backup. The one more important aspect of Fiori design is that it is conversational. That means you don't have to remember any transaction. Everything is on the screen. It's very conversational. It's like a dialogue which you have with your ERP system. Everything is very interactive, and there is ease of going from app to app, which we'll be explaining in our later phases. To understand the entire design, so the first is value. So what do you mean by value? Value is about consistency in the system, which means that there is no lag in the system. There is, when you transition from one screen to another, it behaves in a very consistent manner. Then the integration part, which means that all your backend systems, whatever you have, maybe you have MDG system, you have your MOC, you have your IBP, you have your BI systems, everything can be integrated onto one single launchpad. So that's how Fiori can be integrated, and you will have only single entry point in terms of accessing all your ERP system. So gone are the days when you used to remember, or you used to open your logon pad, and there will be multiple list of systems where you need to click and log in. Now everything is integrated into one Fiori launchpad, right? And what are the principles on what we build a Fiori? So the first one is an RBAC methodology, which is role-based access control. So it's all part of design thinking, right? So role-based access control, adaptive. It is very adaptive. The access to your Fiori system is controlled entirely by role, just like how it was done on your ERP system. It gives a same level of security, so we don't have to worry about the security aspect of Fiori, because there are obvious questions that when you access Fiori on a web interface, how exactly are we going to secure the access, right? So that is the core principle of the design. We have to bring in that principle, which was working wonderfully well. We leverage the same here onto Fiori. We have role-based access control. It's very adaptive. You can have a different user experience according to the user can have his own page. He can design his own page. Fiori gives you that flexibility, and it's very delightful. I mean, it's very pleasing to the eye. When you look at the apps, you don't have to remember any transaction. Those are the plus points for any business users. So if you look at it coherently, so what Fiori brings is a new user experience where we are not forcing the users to stick to one particular way of working. User can decide what he wants to see, when he wants to see, and what he wants to do at whatever time he wants to do it. So that is the flexibility, and these are the design principles on which Fiori is based on. Now, let's look at the evolution of Fiori. As I said, it was launched in 2013. It was only for a desktop user. The intention of using Fiori is to give a new user interface, which is separate, which is different than the GUI interface, the SAP GUI, which was used earlier, and move it to a web-based interface where you get all these fancy tiles. You have your KPI numbers, information flashed on the tile of the Fiori app. Then we moved on to Fiori 2.0 in 2016, where the tablets, the interfaces, the mobile interfaces were also introduced. And now in today's day and time, we are in Fiori 3.0. It has a lot more advanced options. You can bring in your embedded analytics. You can do your analytics. The Fiori acts as one stop for all your ERP solutions. So everything can be embedded into Fiori. That's how it has been designed, and SAP has also provided a lot of ready apps which can be deployed right away into the system, reducing the overall time of the implementation. So there are 14,000 apps to date, a little more than that, which can be readily deployed and ready to use in terms of a Fiori implementation project. Now, the core aspect of Fiori is called as a Fiori launchpad, right? The Fiori launchpad is the page which is opened for the user as an entry point. So Fiori launchpad acts as an entry point. So what all do we see in a Fiori launchpad? So first, let's look at the architecture here. So your web browser, let me take a pointer. Okay, so the first is the clients which we are going to use. The web browser is the one which will be acting as your client. So it is applicable for both your laptop desktops, your Android devices, your iOS devices. So all of that will be accessible on your web browser. The Fiori Launchpad opens up in a web browser. It has connectivity through HTTP protocol, and also the OData services which runs in the backend. Now, all these Fiori elements, all these technologies, the backend technologies for your HTML, for GUI, your WebDyn pros, your classical UIs, all of that are connected to your web browser, and your Launchpad acts as your web browser acts as the client which holds all of this together, and your Launchpad is the only entry and exit point for all your ERP activities, be it on your laptop or desktop or your tablet or your phone or any mobile device for that matter. Now that's how the Fiori Launchpad design. Let's take a deep dive into what exactly the Launchpad contains. So if you see here, so this is how the Launchpad looks. So there are a lot of items onto a Launchpad. Let's try to explain all of those which you can see on a Launchpad. So firstly, you get all these styles which you see here. So all these styles are your apps. These, when you click on these are your apps. Similar to a transaction, maybe performing more than one transaction. The actions performed by multiple transactions can be clubbed into one single app, and there are multiple types of apps which can hold a lot of information. Like the ones which you see here, these are your KPI apps. So it flashes important information so that the business user understand whether he has to click that app or not, right? So does he have any approval pending? In the earlier day and age, he had to log in or he has to execute a transaction to see if there are any approvals which he has to take action on. Now he can decide, just by looking at the tile, he can decide if he has to click on this app and go and take some action. So there are color codes as well. Red indicates a little dangerous stage where he needs to take immediate action. Green is that he can take that action at a later point of time. So these kind of information are flashed on the tile. So these are the information which is provided on the face of the tile, which helps the business user or the end user to decide what he has to use and when he has to use. So the Fiori Launchpad contains the home page. So this what you look at here in this small screen here is the home page. And these home pages are designed per the roles which are assigned to the user. So it is role specific pages, so whatever the user sees on the page is accessible to him. Although there are exceptions to it, which I don't want to talk about. There are exceptions where you can let the user have restricted access to a certain app, but that comes at a later technical point of time. But whatever he sees on the screen, he will have access to it, at least to go through the app and see what the information is available, right? Then there is a navigation menu here. If the user goes in here, and he can look at the navigation, he can search for the apps, he can search for the catalogs, he can search for the groups, and there are multiple ways to search for the apps. Let's look at that. So when you have a launchpad, it is divided into groups. So these are called as groups, although there is a new concept called as spaces and pages, which has been recently introduced for an on-premise system. It works similar to a group, where your apps are bundled into meaningful categories, where user can go through these groups and identify. So for example, if he has a group called purchasing, so if all the apps or all the actions which needs to take in with respect to purchasing will be bundled together into one bunch of apps. So he don't have to scroll through a lot of pages here. He can just directly go through the group and he can execute that. There are multiple ways to identify or search for the required app. One more thing I wanted to highlight here: the user may have, let's say, user can have 100 or 200 apps, access to 200 apps, but it is not necessary that he has to look at all the apps in one page, right? There are apps which he may be using very seldom, like let's say for a month-end activity or for a year-end activity. You don't have to look at that. You don't have to see it every day on his launchpad. So Fiori provides us the power to hide that in something called as a catalog. So he can search for those, he can design his own launchpad, he can design his own front page. We can also pre-deliver a designed front page to him and give him the power to modify it according to his needs. So that's how the Fiori Launchpad works. There are more than three ways to be precise, where he can search for the apps. He can use the navigation menu. He can use the app finder. There is something called as an app finder. When he goes to the settings, he can search for that as well. So the Fiori Launchpad is not all about what the apps which he sees on the page. There is a shell bar which gives a lot of additional information, like enterprise search. If he has a purchase order number, he can just type in the purchase order number, and it showcases the right app where he can address related to that purchase order. He can change that purchase order, he can edit, he can display that purchase order, he can put that into a report. You just have to put that purchase order number in an enterprise search section, which you see right here, right? So there is an enterprise search section here where he can search not just for the apps but also for other elements which make sense to his job profile. Then there is notification. So every notification, it's self-explanatory. So whenever the user has an actionable item, it pops up into his notification, and he can directly access that from the shell bar. Then there is something very interesting called as user assistance. So not everybody may be aware of how to navigate through Fiori or how to navigate through a certain app. So what user assistance does is it gives you a video enabled access of how to do and what to do on a particular app. So user assistance can be enabled for every app. Then the user has to just click on the user assistance, and he will get a detailed how to guide on the screen itself. So that's a very interesting aspect of Fiori and Fiori Launchpad. Then there are many user access menus where he can customize his groups, and he can play around with how he exactly wants to see his Launchpad. So these are all the aspects of a Fiori Launchpad. It's very interactive and it's very customizable at the same time. Now, the other aspect of Fiori Launchpad is the navigation, the in-app navigation. So let me compare it with the traditional way of accessing. So if you have a GUI and you have a purchase order, you might have to use more than one transaction code. So you type in /n or /o, put that transaction, get the details from one screen, and put that information into another transaction and get the desired result. But here in Fiori, a lot of things are addressed by in-app navigation. So there are in-app navigations where you can move from one app to another by these clickable links. So these provide insight to information. As you can see on the screen, you don't have to go through multiple screens. Everything will be displayed just by a click of a button. There will be hyperlinks enabled. You can again customize it based on the level of access which you want to provide. You can maybe disable this hyperlink if you don't want to the user to have an edit access to a particular sales order. If you only wants to display, he gets only the display access. These links will take him to another app. This also provides more links here. If you can see here, he can navigate to multiple apps, where he can take an action, the related action onto that particular item which is open. So this is the in-app navigation which is possible from Fiori. Now, so what I'm trying to explain here is the new way of working, right? So the Fiori Launchpad is the stepping stone for the new way of working. So let's try to understand in a little more technical detail of how exactly it is achievable. So your Fiori, if you look at it at a technical perspective, there are catalogs, there are groups, and there are business roles, right? So at the core of it, there are Fiori apps. The Fiori apps will be bundled into a catalog. If you see these blocks over here, right? So these blocks represent a catalog, and multiple apps can be included. These are customizable catalogs. There are standard catalogs as well. There are business catalog, there are technical catalogs. I'll come to that point in the next slide. But you can customize what goes into a catalog. These are your reusable chunks. So we can have them into different users in different combination. And then what the user looks at it, we can also customize that in terms of a group. So let's say if you have 10 apps in a catalog, user only uses 2 of them on a regular basis, 6 of them he doesn't use, or 8 of them he doesn't use at a regular interval. You can only put 2 of them on his launchpad, and that is what displayed onto the user. And these catalogs and groups will be bundled into something called as a business role. And the number of business roles you keep on adding to the apps will keep piling on to his portfolio. Similarly, the design will also correspond to what roles have been assigned to the user. So this is a bird's eye view of how exactly the architecture works in terms of authorizations and the business roles. Now, if you look at the Fiori, as I explained it earlier, there is a single point of entry, and I'm trying to explain here the in-app navigability of the apps. From one app, you can move to multi-tiered apps, maybe 3, 4, 5 levels of apps. You can go through them, and it's again customizable. You can restrict the user from accessing at a certain point of time, or you can remove the access to a certain apps which you feel that it may be risky for that particular job responsibility. That power or that flexibility is available in Fiori. Now, let's try to compare. So Fiori it can be deployed on your older version of SAP, which is ECC 6.0 as well. So Fiori can be realized on ECC, but the entire power of Fiori can be fully realized if you have S4HANA, the latest version of S4HANA. So I've tried to draw a comparison of what is the difference when you deploy Fiori onto ECC and compared to that when you deploy onto your S4HANA. The one small example here I'm trying to explain is the number of apps which are compatible with your ECC. So this is an old screenshot here. At that time, about a month back, there were only 12,798 apps. Today it's around 14,000 apps. So now if I filter this on compatible with ECC, right, I have selected the comparison here, and the total number of apps which are compatible are only 283. So the rest all should be customized apps, so which brings in a lot of developmental activity, which increases the cost exponentially as well. But if you have Fiori, if you have S4HANA, all these 12,798 apps are supported, and you can deploy them right away without much of a developmental involvement over there. So these are plug and play apps. You can use them directly from the Fiori apps library, and a little bit of configuration and you're good to go. So that's how the full power of Fiori can be realized if you have a S4HANA system rather than an ECC. But it doesn't mean that you cannot deploy Fiori on ECC. You can definitely do that, but with a reduced capacity. Now, let me dig a little more deeper into the technical aspects of Fiori, the content design and the business role. Let me talk a little more about the business role, how we configure the business role, and what is a business role in the first place, what are catalogs. Let's try to understand these. So now I have taken a snippet of the Fiori launchpad here. What you see here are tiles. Tiles are nothing but your actionable items or an action. When I call it as an action, it can refer to one transaction code, or it can be a multiple it can be an action combination of multiple transaction codes as well, right? So these are actionable items, which are tiles, which are clickable entities, which are also called as launcher. So it launches an application so that you can perform your action or the job responsibility within that app. Now, every app or every tile has a target mapping behind it. So when I talk about target mapping, it is nothing but a destination of the piece of code which has to be executed in the backend. So when a user clicks on a particular tile, that click identifies only the target map, and it using the OData services, it goes back to the backend system. It executes that service, which will enable the user to perform his activity on the front end. So that's what a target map is all about. Now, coming to a catalog, as I explained earlier, you can there are technical catalogs and there are business catalogs, right? There are standard business catalog, and the ones which you create during an implementation are also called as business catalog, but they are custom business catalogs. A technical catalog is the actual resting place. You can call it as a home of apps, right? Whenever there is an app developed, it has to stay somewhere, and that somewhere is called as a technical catalog. And whenever you try to customize or you want to build your own catalog, you reference the catalog, you reference the app from an existing technical catalog. No app can exist without a technical catalog. Every app should have a technical catalog, be it a custom app, be it a standard SAP provided app. All of that should have a technical catalog. So whenever you create a catalog on your own, SAP have provided their own categorization in terms of a standard catalog based on their standard best practices. They have bundled them into standard business catalog. You can use the standard business catalog as is, or if you have a different requirement for a particular client, you can customize those standard catalogs into your custom catalogs, and you can readily use them. Now, these bundle the apps based on how exactly the design works. So for example, a particular end-to-end, if I take end-to-end process for an example, like let's say a P2P process, it will contain a lot of players or a lot of actors involved in completing one end-to-end process. It's not that one person will be doing the entire process, because it will be a big risk to a organization. So there'll be multiple players. So these catalogs can also be divided based on the segregation of duties as well. Just like we design the roles in the backend in the earlier age, we can design these catalogs to be risk free on its own, and then the combination of catalogs can be used in terms of forming a job role or a job responsibility, which will be assigned to a user. Now, uh, when we talk about catalogs are the ones which provide the access to the apps. Catalogs are a must in terms of having an access to the apps. Groups, on the other hand, it's more of a cosmetic thing where you are designing your launchpad. You don't have to put a lot of apps onto your launchpad, as I explained earlier. You need to make it fast so that you have only a limited number of apps loading onto your launchpad on your front page, which will increase the speed, and also it gives a better user experience. That is your groups. So groups are not mandatory to have, but it is very important to have apps onto your launchpad. So that's why it becomes very important to have groups. And these catalogs and groups are bundled into something called as role. So as we are following the principle of RBAC, role based access control, so the entire access to a particular end user is controlled via a business role. A business role is nothing but a combination of catalogs and groups, and these are the assignable entities to the user, which controls the access to the user at the launchpad level. Now, let's try to understand this in a little more detail. So I have the snippet of your backend role. This is a standard role, which I have taken an example as a BR accountant. So on the menu, so you can add a lot of catalogs here, the ones which you see here, and the groups can also be added. So this works in conjunction with each other. In the next slide, let me show you this. Okay, so this is the architecture, and now if you see here on the right hand top corner, this is the user's launchpad, which is actually blank. There are no apps on to the launchpad. Now when we are trying to customize your launchpad, so there is a technical catalog which contains the apps. Okay, and then what we do, we build a business catalog by referencing the apps from a technical catalog. Now we, on top of this, we add this business catalog to a business role. But when we add it to a business role, there is no change in the launchpad. The launchpad still looks empty. However, you can search for this search for the assigned apps in the enterprise search as well as the app finder, but on the face of the launchpad you will not see any apps. So when we add a group here, right, so I have explained the same thing. When you go to the app finder here or the enterprise search, you can find these apps here. If you can see here, you can see the app, you can see the entire catalog. When you select the catalog, you will see all the apps which it contains. So although it doesn't populate on the launchpad, but you can definitely find it from the app finder or from the enterprise search. To bring the apps onto the launchpad, we introduce something called as a group. So we add these styles onto the group and we assign this group to the business role. Then suddenly you get these apps which are part of the group. Now you don't have to search, you just go ahead and click them and it will be accessible. Similarly, you can add multiple business catalog, multiple business roles to the user. As I have mentioned here in a pictorial representation, you have multiple business catalog, multiple groups, and multiple business roles which are added. That will increase the number of apps onto his launchpad. So that's how, in brief, the Fiori business role concept works. Now, this is the available standard business rules. It's not necessary that we go ahead and use them as is, because SAP define these standard business rules based on multiple factors, and it may or may not be suitable for every industry. So based on the business requirement, we can customize these business rule. We can take advantage of these standard business rule. We can mold it according to our own requirements, our own segregation of duty. We need to consider all the risk factors involved into the business roles, and then we can build our own business roles from the standard business roles. So these are ready to use standard business roles which SAP have provided. These standard business role contain standard catalogs, standard groups, and all that which are readily accessible. So there are about 500 plus standard business roles which are provided by SAP for all those 14,000 apps. Now let's see what exactly Fiori provides out of the box. So now you have your standard business roles. Then the next step will be to activate those standard business roles. So Fiori provides something called as rapid activation, where you can activate all those apps, all those catalogs onto your backend system just by one click of a button, right? There are ready-made tasks which you can run, which will activate all those apps, all those catalogs, all those services, all those SICF nodes, all those connectivity. Everything will be activated just by selecting the standard business role and running the rapid activation. Then comes our delivery model, where we provide a customized design of the Fiori apps. Then we mold all whatever is standard, we mold it into custom, and we adjust the authorization to all these apps according to the client requirement, and then we provide the deployment. So at the end of it, once we, from the starting into the end, we will get a highly customized set of apps which are restricted, which are provided based on the role-based authorization. We have which are risk-free as well, and the end product is a very good user interface along with all the security in place. So that's how a Fiori deployment goes from starting to the end. Now the Fiori front end, the back end, both are the separate entities. There are multiple ways of deploying Fiori. One is that you have one S4HANA box which acts as your backend, and you have a separate Fiori box which acts as a gateway or the front end. This mode is called as a central hub deployment, where your Fiori resides in a separate box. Although SAP recommends that you have your Fiori on top of your S4HANA, which is called as an embedded mode of deployment, where your Fiori and your backend system both lies or resides in the same box, right? And then it becomes easy to customize, easy to have your PFCG security, and also the design elements of how your launchpad is designed all on one system. And it also eases the in-app navigation. There are multiple apps which provides seamless integration between app-to-app navigation, and also there may be multiple systems which can have their own embedded Fiori, which can all be combined into one Fiori launchpad. That flexibility is also available. There are multiple apps like overview pages, which are not the tiles, but these are the placeholders for different apps. So all these, the KPI apps, the monitoring apps, the analytics apps, all can be used on your Fiori launchpad with utmost flexibility. Now, so let's try to summarize from starting to the end how a business role will work. So I have explained it earlier, but let me try to explain it in a little more detail. So first is the functional teams will identify your launchpad content. So what exactly is required? It can be provided in terms of transaction if we are following a traditional way. It can be your business process documents. SAP also provides standard business process defined, which can be leveraged as well. And all of these is available on the Fiori apps library. Now then we verify the content, we adjust the content as required, and we create our own version of a business role. A business role, as I said, it's a combination of your catalogs and groups. And then we adjust the authorization. As I explained earlier, we can restrict the user from accessing certain aspects of particular app. Let's say there is a display app and there is a clickable link which will allow you to edit, let's say a display purchase order app, and the purchase order itself, the purchase order number itself is a hyperlink, and when you click on that link, it will take you to edit purchase order app. We can stop that from happening, because if you are giving a display only access to a user, we can stop that from happening. We can take out that hyperlink. It will only be in a display mode. So that is what we call about that is what I mentioned here as adjusting authorization, and then we proceed to assign the business role to the end user. Let me take a pause. If anybody has a question, please feel free to put that in the chat box. We'll be more than happy to answer. Do we have any questions so far? Okay, great.
Not at this time, but if you could just keep a few minutes so that we could ask some frequently asked questions, that would be great.
Sure. At the end of the session, I'll reserve some time to address or answer those questions. Okay. Okay, I didn't realize. So we are at the end of the session. So that's all I have for today. So Matangi, if you have any questions.
Yeah. So let me do one thing. So here are some frequently asked questions. This might help some of our attendees with something they might have in mind. So can you please tell me, what is the typical timeline for a Fiori implementation? How much time should they typically budget?
Okay, so yes. So when it comes to a timeline, it depends on the complexity of the business which we are into and the amount of Fiori which they want to deploy. So there is a roadmap which is laid by SAP, which talks about multiple modes of Fiori deployment. One can be a cherry picking approach, where we select only certain apps to be deployed, and not the entire power of Fiori will be posed onto the end user, because it will be a massive change. So in these kind of situation where we are selecting only a certain app, let's say 100 or 200 apps, it can be deployed within a span of 3 to 4 months. Apart from your basic or the standard authorization deployment, only the Fiori app deployment would take somewhere around 3 to 4 months. Then we move on to showcase approach, which will take a little longer. Then we have a full Fiori first approach, which will take at least 7 to 8 months of the deployment time.
Got it. Thank you. Here's another question. Typically, how many apps do you think a client will end up using out of all the available ones?
Okay, So as I said, so it depends on the mode which the clients choose. So if they go for Fiori first, so which means that all their business processes will be handled, and Fiori will be the only entry and exit point for all business users. Although I must agree that I must accept that Fiori do not provide 100% compatibility in terms of apps. There are certain exceptions like 5% for more of a technical kind of execution, which still we need to rely on the backend, but that is mostly for the technical users or the system administrators who will be using the backend system. So when we talk about this kind of a deployment, when everything is on Fiori, the number of apps may vary from the modules which are available. So let's take an example. If we have finance, MDG, SCM, supply chain, and procurement, all these things combined, so there should be somewhere around 800 to 1200 apps. And the more modules we keep on adding, like we have TM, we have PRA, we have a lot of other things, right? So the apps keep on adding. So based on my experience, I have deployed 2,500 apps for one of my client. So it had a vast array of businesses included. So we ended up having 2,500 apps. It includes in-app navigations as well.
Okay, so that leads to the next question. User wants to know if these custom apps have any user assistance videos.
Custom apps, it can be built. So there is something called as Enable Now, which is again a product of SAP. And Enable Now is a learning tool, right? So it enables customized, which we can add the end user, which can be custom, add content on maps as well. So that can whenever we have user assistance, which is for standard app, this Enable Now is the powering tool, that is what is powering the user assistance. So when we have custom content developed, that can be integrated to user assistance, and that can be leveraged for custom apps as well.
Okay, great. Here's another question from the attendee.
I hope I answered that question. Yeah.
Sure. And yes, attendees, if you think
ahead.
the question wasn't answered, please feel free to add another question. This one says, what is involved in a Fiori version upgrade? Do custom apps need to be reevaluated for technical changes according to the new Fiori version?
Usually speaking, when we have a version upgrade onto Fiori, we are talking about addition to the apps. But however, that's a very good question. So there is a 10% chance of changes in the technical setup of the app. So we do have to analyze what all the changes have gone through the apps, what are the changes which have gone through the OData services. And this is very much integrated with what we used to do in usual upgrade, like your SU25, so which will give you all the information which has been changed onto Fiori. But that assessment has to be done for any upgrade.
Okay, thank you. And here's one question. This one says, can you add your SAP Fiori APIs to sell to other users to the AP store?
Sorry,
AP.
can we elaborate that question a little more?
Okay, I will leave that to the attendee. So let's do this one. Can SAP Fiori 3.0 be a standalone application, or is SAP required either ECC or S4HANA?
SAP Fiori is a gateway service, right? So it definitely requires a backend system which holds all your data, which holds all your transactional information. SAP Fiori provides the front end or the new user interface to it. So definitely, yes, we need a backend system to it. It cannot be a standalone system.
Okay. And let me bring up another question. Typically, how many resources should a company plan on allocating for a Fiori implementation?
Okay, that's a good one. So a Fiori implementation usually requires 3 different teams. One is your security and authorization team. One is your UI UX development team when it comes to custom app development or node implementations and all that. And the other smaller team would be a basis team, which is required in the initial phases where we need to activate a lot of apps, although it can be done with the security team as well. But basically, ideally speaking, we would require 3 different teams, and the number of resources depend on what is the exact number of business processes are involved. So it totally depend on that. So in an ideal situation, 1 basis resource, 2 UI UX developers, and 4 to 5 security and authorization, because chunk of the work is done by the authorization and security team in terms of deploying the apps. Most of the responsibility can be shared between basis and security, or UI UX and security. The UI UX and the development team is required when there is a huge scope of custom app development.
Thank you. And here's another question. Are Webdin Pro apps, do they become responsive when added to the Fiori launchpad?
Yes, definitely yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask another question. Can you think of some common mistakes clients make when they jump into an implementation planning stage for Fiori implementation, just so that our attendees can avoid some common pitfalls?
Yes. So usually when we talk about a business process or a digital transformation, when a certain client is moving from one ERP to another, or upgrading from an older SAP system into a newer SAP system like S/4HANA, the Fiori, the authorization, the roles, these all take a backstage, right? Their business processes take very importance in the beginning of the project. So if we have to have a smooth flow of this, so a Fiori team or a security team should be involved from the very first day, from your project pre-preparation phase, right? So they can help in understanding the business processes as well. They can help in defining the different levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4 of your business processes, and then appropriately allocate or help you identify the exact app which is required from the day one. So the most common mistake which I have seen in my experience is that Fiori taking last priority in terms of a project deployment. So that is very dangerous when it comes to the go live. It can be pushed further and further until your apps are finalized. So it requires more attention, and I would suggest that if the Fiori team is involved from the pre-preparation phase, that would be great. That is one most common thing which I wanted to highlight. Yes.
Okay, here's one more. What technologies are compatible other than SAP UI5 to develop apps according to Fiori standards?
So it's a SAP inherent tool. I mean, it also supports SaaS products like IBP, SuccessFactors, Concur. All those have the UI5 element added to it. So I do not have an example where other technologies outside of SAP can be embedded with Fiori. No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, thank you so much. This one last question from Pavan. What is ABAP team role in a Fiori implementation?
Okay, so ABAP team would be required in terms of custom app development. There is in-app extensibility, which they will have to do. They will have to write the OData services. They will have to create the semantic objects. They have to create the target mapping and the intent for the custom apps. So they have to also write CDS views. When it comes to embedded analytics, they will have to make sure that the CDS views which will be consumed by your Fiori apps are working perfectly fine. So this is a very important part of a developer's responsibility in terms of providing custom content on Fiori.
Okay, thank you so much. We are at time now. So attendees, if you have any more questions, Raghu, if you can go to the next slide, we can display the contact information for the attendees to get in touch with us. So attendees, please see on your screen the way you can contact either Randy or Mamta with any further questions, clarifications. If you're thinking about upgrading to Fiori, please feel free to reach out to us. Our team is standing by to help you. Again, thank you all for your time today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to connect with our information group via email, phone, on LinkedIn, whatever works for you. So thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.